Salute is a program for and about men and women who have served our country. Our program includes news about the laws that affect veterans, information on benefits and services, and news from veterans organizations. And now, our host, Bob Peters.
Hello, welcome to Salute. I'm your host, Bob Peters, and with me today is an old friend of mine who's a retired Army Major, George Arnold. And George, for everybody who doesn't know, is one of the best karaoke singers in all of Lake County. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, my friend. It's good to see you again. I've been after you for a long time to come here.
Yes, well, thank you very much for having me here. I'm glad to be here. Matter of fact, I'm glad to be anywhere.
At my age, right? That's an old joke, George. Hey, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a native Floridian.
Yes, I was born right here in Lake County on Highway 44, just before you cross the St. Johns River on the Lake County side. A little place called Crow's Bluff. I don't know how it got that name, but that's where I was born. As a matter of fact, I was delivered at home. The doctor came to the house and delivered me, cost me $25. It didn't cost me, it cost my dad $25. I don't know if it's worth it or not.
Did he ever ask for his money back?
No, but the doctor gave me his name. The doctor's name was George Warren Frazan.
Oh, yeah?
So he looked at my mother and said, he looks like a George Warren to me, and so that's what Mom named him.
Oh, that's good.
Lived with it ever since.
Yeah. Well, obviously a small town or community back
Well,
then.
it really wasn't. They had a small store there in the forks of the road, and that was all that was there. It used to be a sawmill there at one time. Of course, there were sawmills all over Florida at that time, but that had closed down, so there wasn't anything there really.
What did your dad do, you remember?
He did a lot of different things. He worked as a meat cutter for a while. He worked as a carpenter for a while. And when I was about 10 years old, we moved from that area and moved to Fort Myers, Florida. I grew up down there and graduated from high school in Fort Myers. Mm-hmm. But it was a good life.
Yeah. So after high school, is that when you went in the Army?
Yes. Well, like a lot of kids, when you finish high school, you don't have any idea what you really want to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
I don't know what I want to do now.
I'm still searching.
Yeah. What am I going to be when I grow up?
Yes. But anyway, most of my buddies went into the service, so I decided I would do the same. Well, I went in for 3 years. I went through Fort Gordon, Georgia. Took I think it was 2 months of basic training. And then I stayed there and went through 2 months of telephone installer repair school. And from there, I went to France. And after 3 years in the military, I decided I didn't like the military. So I came back home, got out, and went to work for the man down the street. Well, I didn't like that too much either. So after 2 years of doing that, I could see I wasn't, doing real well, especially here in Florida where you don't get too much for pay anyway. Mm. So I decided to go back in the service, and that's probably the best decision, one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. I went back in the service, and right away they sent me back overseas to France. After being over there a few years, I worked.
What did you do when you excuse me, but what did you do when you first went into the Army that you kept winding up going to France? If I'd have known that, I'd have joined the Army.
Well, it was, like I say, it was installed telephones.
Oh, okay.
And then
communications.
Yes, it was in communications, Signal Corps the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And after I'd been over there a while, I worked my way up to staff sergeant. And I had a small detachment that was about 60 miles from headquarters. I had, I think it was either 12 or 14 enlisted people working with me. And I had civilians, about 10 or 12 civilians that worked with me. We had a dial central office, had a radio section, had a communication center, and had a photo section. So it was, we had quite a few people there doing a lot of important jobs, and it was one of the best jobs I've ever had. Mm. And one day, I got a call from the first sergeant and said, "Arnold, get up here, the old man wants to talk to you." The company commander wanted to talk to me. I said, "Okay." I said, "Did I do something wrong?" And he said, "I don't know, get on up there." So I went up there and talked to the company commander, and he says, "Sergeant Arnold, the Army needs some commissioned officers." and I want you to apply for a OCS, Officers Candidate School. And I said, well, Captain, I'm happy where I'm at. I love my job. I know what I'm doing. I'm having a good time. I really don't think I'd be a good commissioned officer. He says, Sergeant Arnold, you're not listening to me.
Yours is not the reason why.
Yeah. I said, okay, fine. So I did. I applied for OCS, and they gave you a test, make sure you can read and write. I passed both those, by the way.
That's good. I'm happy.
took a PT test, make sure I could touch my toes. So off to OCS I go, from France back to the States, right? Well, I've spent about 8 or 9 years in the Signal Corps, right? You would think that they would send me to Signal Corps school, right, to become an officer, right? No. No. Where did they send me? Fort Benning, Georgia. What's at Fort Benning, Georgia? Infantry.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
So here I go. But that was the beginning, really. That decision to do that really changed my entire life. I was just blessed to have made it. I get there going through school. I'm the oldest guy there, probably 20. I'm about 29 years old at the time, trying to keep up these young fellows that are 19, 20, 21-year-old. And you don't walk any place or you run.
Yeah.
My ankle swelled up so bad from running, I almost didn't make it. I went to the doctor and they said, well, there's nothing we can do for you. You got 2 choices. You can either drop out or continue to run. So I continued to run, and I made it through. But while I'm there, lo and behold, they come out, they need helicopter pilots. I don't know anything about helicopters. I took the test, and I'll be darned, I passed that. I said, geez, what a blessed life I'm living. So, take the test, I pass it, and then I leave there. They want me to take 6 months of training in the infantry unit to get familiar with what I'm supposed to be doing as an infantry officer. Have you ever been to Colorado?
Yeah.
In October, November, December, January, February?
Gets cold.
You don't want to be there. And here I am running around the field with lieutenant bars on, freezing to death. Well, so much for that. After 6 months of being up there, then I went to Fort Walters for primary helicopter training. 4 months, and didn't kill myself there either.
Where's Fort Walters? I don't know.
Fort Walters, Texas.
Texas, okay.
Yeah, it's probably about an hour and a half, maybe west of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Nice place. Loved it there. Had a good time. It was one of the best things I've ever done before in my life. It was just so much fun flying helicopters. I couldn't believe it, you know. Here I am, flying helicopters. It's almost impossible to believe, you know.
A little boy from Florida.
Yeah, really, really. And after 4 months there, then I went to Hunter Stewart in Alabama, and that's where you transition into the Huey guns, the Huey helicopters, the big boys. They were then, and not now. They were then. I guess now to be considered Model A's or Model T's.
I don't know. Time marches on.
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, finished up 4 months there, got my wings, and I'll be darned, finished there, and another good thing comes along. They say, we need gunship pilots, so we're going to send you through a transition course into the H-1G Cobra gunship, right? I didn't even ask for it. They just gave it to me. Didn't even have to ask for it. Still can't believe it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was about a month, maybe 5 weeks of training there. Then after that, of course, I went to Vietnam and spent a year. That was in 1969.
Yeah, those were the big years, 66, 67, 68, 69. Those were the big years.
They were busy years. Things were really hopping then, you know. And so I went over there, spent a year there, didn't get hurt, thank God. The first 25, in our company anyway, I don't know if it was the same all over, but in our company, the first 25 hours you're there, you spent with some grizzly warrant officer, get you familiar with the area of operation and what you're supposed to be doing over there, right? And 25 hours goes by quick because when you're flying every day, you're usually flying anywhere between 4 and 8 hours a day, so it doesn't take you long to get 25 hours of flying time. But the first flight over there, first day, and they call me Peter Pilot when you first get over.
Peter's pilot.
Yeah, they won't even, that old Grizzly W4 didn't even want me touching the
warrant
controls, you know.
Warrant officers, they always say they were between the spit and the polish.
Yeah, that's right.
You know,
That's right. That's exactly right.
it's kind of like that's the guy you want to know because he can help you out.
Yes, he can. Anyway, we're out there flying around the area. I'm not even touching the controls. He won't let me do that. All of a sudden, we hear an emergency signal coming over there. And then Longtan Radio, which was a radio that covered that area, put out a call. It says, we had an Air Force pilot shot down a certain location. Is there anybody in that vicinity? Well, we happened to be in that vicinity, you know. So we homed in on a signal. We landed about 100 yards out from the tree line. He didn't want to get too close. And that pilot saw us coming in for a landing, and buddy, he left that tree line and he was running. I mean, he was flat moving. When he hit our aircraft, you know, the Huey's got two big doors on each side. You can slide them back and lock them in place. He dove into there, and if it had not been for the crew chief and the door gunner catching him by the collar and the seat of his pants, he would have went right on out
the other side.
He was never so happy to see us. And he
Did you take on any ground fire there? Or?
Oh yeah, he heard the VC, so he got out in time.
Yeah.
And he was just lucky. We just happened to be there. And after that, he kept in touch with us every couple of weeks, 3 weeks. He'd give us a call down there and talk to us, see what's going on. If we needed anything, because he was out of Saigon, that was the big PX. If you needed anything, you could call him. He'd send it to you, you know. But anyway, I finished up my tour over there. That was in the year of '69. And I came back home, and they sent me to Fort Walters, Texas again to become an instructor pilot. And that was a pleasurable job too, but it was a dangerous one trying to teach these young people to fly. They'll kill you, I'm telling you.
Yeah. It's like I taught one of my daughters how to drive, you know. Actually, I taught a couple of the kids how to drive. But my daughter was driving off the road, and you could hear the brush hitting the side, and I'm in the passenger seat. What are you doing? She says, well, there's a car on the other side. I don't want to hit the other car. I said, so you're going to take me out? Yeah, it could be an experience, I'll bet.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, talking about teaching children to drive, I had an old VW that I taught my children to drive on. That's probably one of the best cars to teach a child to drive on because it's weak enough it can't get away from him, and it's geared low enough you can't kill the engine, so it's a perfect vehicle, you know. Anyway, back to what we're talking about. I was an instructor pilot there for almost 2 years, and a class went through every 4 months to take a class through. I went through quite a few classes there. And that was a very rewarding experience to go through, teaching young kids to get up and fly, you know. And I enjoyed it very much. I was glad when it was over, though. I decided to go back to Vietnam for a second tour, and that was in '72. Only before I went at the time, I said, asked the Army if they would send me through another transition course, and they said, sure, what do you want? I said, Chinook helicopters. That's the big boy with the two big
props in the
back.
Big
props on it. So I went, that was down in Hunter Stewart too. I went down there and went through that. That was a month or maybe 6 weeks. I'm not really sure. It's been so many years ago. But made it through that course, and then went back to Vietnam. Only this time, excuse me, this time I didn't do a lot of flying. I was mostly in operations and in supply. And once in a while, you have to go out and fly once in a while to keep your wings, you know. So I did just a minimum amount of flying. But for some reason, I never, you know, I felt, the whole time I was in Vietnam, first tour and second tour, I always felt comfortable. I just didn't feel like anything was going to happen to me. I don't know. Just something told me that nothing bad was going to happen. And
we were younger then.
That's right. Younger and foolish, I guess.
Yeah.
But, and after that, that tour was over. Then I went to, came back to the States, went through the Officers Advanced course at Fort Benning. That was a 6-month course also. And I'd been working on my education all along.
Yeah, I was going to say, you must have had to get college credit.
Yes, I was going to night school. And I had 3 years out of the way. I only needed 1 more year to finish up my college in 1 more year. So I asked the Army, once again, if I could go to college, send me to college for a year to finish up. And I said, yeah. I'll tell you, I was just blessed. I was in the right place at the right time my entire career for everything, really. It was just a joy. And so anyway, I went to school out in Kansas State Teachers College. It's what it was called then. since then it's been changed. It's Emporia State, Kansas College. And I went there for a year, got my degree. And from there, I went to Fort Belvoir, Virginia, and I finished up my career at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. And we were flying VIPs around there, senators and congressmen and what have you. Right. Different places, wherever they wanted to go to meetings and what have you. And that was a good job too. We flew a lot of pretty high-ranking dignitaries from Congress, Senate, and what have you. Oh, and of course, I had the presidential flight right across on the other side of the field. They flew the president around.
You didn't fly the president?
No, I did not.
But you flew anybody
Huey models.
Yeah, but I mean anybody we'd recognize names or?
Yeah, Senator Kennedy, flew him one time. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of other small-time dignitaries we flew around. I don't remember who all they were, but we did it all the time. But, it was a good job too, rewarding job. But I was glad when that was over. Mm-hmm. I stayed there for almost 5 years, and that ended up my career in the military.
So that was 22 years in the military.
Right. Yeah.
You have some pictures that you want to show us, and then I want to ask you about. You were married in the military, or when you were in the military? So we'll get to that later. But
okay.
Why don't you show these photos that you brought along?
Okay. This is a picture of me and one of the warrant officers, W4 at the field. He'd been around forever and a day, and he could fly one of these things backward. We were going out on some sort of flight that day. I don't remember exactly what it was, because every day you're doing the same darn thing.
What kind of bird is that?
That's a UH-1H, Huey.
And you're the tall one.
Yeah, right.
For people who don't know. I mean, you don't exactly. You don't have a beard there. You know what I'm saying?
No. Yeah, I do look a little different now, don't I?
Yeah,
well, of course,
we change over.
That was about 40 years ago, something like that. Anyway, this is my final picture in the military. That's the day that I got my retirement. That was it. That was a proud day for me. I was happy with that.
No, it should be.
Yeah, and this is a picture of my family. All except for this one. This is my sister. I don't know what she was doing with us, but she was with us anyway.
Yeah. And that lovely lady over on the left is
This is
Helga,
my wife.
which I know.
Yeah, Helga. This is my daughter, Pamela Sue. This is my oldest son, Scott. And this is my youngest one, Tim. And of course, they're all up and grown now. And my daughter's 50, and they got a son, my oldest son's 49, youngest son is 46. So. Yeah. And we've got grandchildren now and great-grandchildren and all that. So.
And you've been married 51 years, you told me.
51 years last December 27th, as a matter of fact.
So when you were in the service, obviously you were in the service there.
Right.
What point of your career did you meet Helga? I mean, did your kids have to travel all over the country with you too while you were going to this?
When I went back to France, I met my wife. Second time I went back to France. No, wait a minute. Let me back up a minute. I met my wife in France on the first tour. Okay. We got married. We came back. I got out of the service. We came back to the States. Her father. She's German. Her father was a pilot in World War II, a German pilot. Well, he was killed in the war. And then when our troops went over to occupy France and Germany at that time, her mother met her stepfather. And Helga came back with them.
Her stepfather was in the service.
In the service too. He was a military man too. He was he was an NCO. So they came back to the States. Helga came back to the States with them when she was 11 years old, and she didn't speak any English at the time. So she went to school here, picked up on the English. As a matter of fact, she speaks it so well now that you would never. She's forgotten her German. Really, she does. She's not really doesn't speak German at all anymore.
Well, she became an American citizen too, right?
Right. So when I went back in the service the second time, then we went back overseas and took all the kids and everything with me over there. So I had two kids while I was out of the service. The break in between service. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had two children. Then the youngest son. He came along after we got back from France the second tour, so that's it.
So So you got to see the world too, eh?
Oh yes. They,
And you told me your kids are your sons. A couple of your sons are in the service or were in the service.
Yes, my daughter was in the Army. She served 3 years in the military. She was in intelligence. Pretty
Must have
smart.
took
She's
after
smart.
Helga. You knew that was coming,
Didn't take
right?
after me, that's for sure.
You knew that was coming.
Yeah. And my youngest son, he went in the Navy. He was in the Navy for 4 years. He served on an aircraft carrier, the USS Kennedy, I believe it was. And he decided that he didn't want to stay in the Navy either, so he got out. So all my my kids, 2 of them live up in Georgia. One in the daughter lives in Worthington. Yeah, and my youngest son lives in Rockmart. My oldest son lives up in Nashville, Tennessee. And so once a year we get to see them. We go up at usually Thanksgiving time. And,
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's
great to have, hear a next generation going into service too. You got to be very proud.
right.
I'm sure you are. What happened after you got out of the service? What did you start doing then?
Well, I retired from the service up in Fort Belvoir, Virginia, and I came back to Florida. Came back to DeLand, Florida, which you know where that's at. We're just east of us.
Oh yeah.
And I got a job with the telephone company, and I worked for the telephone company for about 14 years, and then I had enough of that, so I retired from the telephone company in 1994, and I've been retired ever since. And I was 57, I guess, at the time, 56.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. You told me you keep in touch with some of the.
Yes, I do. On the internet, we get back and forth all the time, and occasionally we have reunions. I went to one.
What was your outfit? I mean, everybody.
The first was 175th Aviation Company, and the second time it was the 180th Assault Helicopter Company. So.
George, you spent 22 years, right?
Yes.
In the Army. It was a
Yeah.
good career. Then, what would you like to say to the young people today, about careers and.
Careers? I think a career in the military is one of the greatest experiences any young fellow can have, or young lady can have. There's just so much that's available for them, and there's no limits to what you can do in there. Whatever, they'll give you whatever you're willing to work for. If you want a good education, they'll give you a good education. If you want a good job, they'll give you a good job. So whatever you want, if you're willing to work for it, you can have it. And I'm attested by that. I'm telling you right now. I know.
You worked your way up to major, yes.
I did it.
Yeah.
So I know it can be done.
Yeah.
All you got to do is be willing to put forth the effort,
And the technology, as you were saying, we were talking before, the technology nowadays, compared to when you were young. I mean,
my goodness.
Now they invented the car.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But things, what we were flying back then is just so obsolete. I mean, we were flying by the seat of our pants in Vietnam most of the time, especially when you go out on night missions and things of that nature. There are no radio beacons around there that you can home in on, so you're flying with a map in your hand with a red light at night up there.
Really?
Yeah, really, that's right. And when you're flying along the Cambodian border, the river that divides Cambodia from Vietnam, if you're not careful, you wander over across the border. You're not supposed to be in Cambodia to start with. There was a no-flyer. You didn't go over there. But occasionally it happened because you get lost on the map there, So,
yeah.
It did happen. And you really didn't want to get caught over there,
No, it's amazing. I had a guy on the show who was a World War II flying ace.
Right.
And he shot down 5 enemy planes.
Right.
And then we were talking about when he was flying around. He said, there's one of his flights. He came down out of the clouds after flying around his first solo and was totally lost.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, nowadays, I mean, they could track anything.
Right. Oh, yeah.
But in Vietnam too, you didn't have that luxury.
You didn't have GPSs and all that kind of stuff over there. You flew time, distance, and heading. If you had to go from point A to point B, you looked at the map, figured out the direction you had to go, figured the amount of time it took, and you took off, and that's what you did.
Especially
It wasn't
night
bad
flying,
during-
that had to be tough.
Well, it was. It wasn't too bad during the daytime, especially where I was at down in the Four Corps area, in the southern part of Vietnam, because they had canals, okay, and all those canals were unique.
Yeah.
And you could find yourself on the map. There was no problem to follow the canals or whatever. That was during the day. But at night, if some outpost got hit and you had to call out gunships to go up there in the middle of the night to support them, it was tricky and it was dangerous too.
Oh, I'm sure it was.
It was, and it was not a worse feeling in the world than be flying along and you're not exactly sure where you're at, you know.
Oh yeah, I would think so. Yeah, I got to give you a lot of credit, my friend. Yeah. But we didn't have night vision back then, did we?
No, we didn't have any night vision devices over there at all.
So you just wait for somebody to shoot at you, and you know where they are? Is that how that works?
Well, most of the time, if some of the outposts got hit late in the evening, at night, and they call you in, you go up there, and then they have set out flares along the perimeter there, so that and they'll tell you, give you to the north of us 300 yards or whatever, you know, they're firing from that position, and so you know where to release your fire, you know. And you did the best you could. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't work well enough, but we were there to support the troops when they needed us. And some of us got hurt over there. I never got hurt. My door gunner got shot one time. My pilot got shot one time. But fortunately, both of them were minor. He got hit in the elbow. They were out of action.
How many were on the crew? On the...
Oh, you had the pilot and the co-pilot, and you had a door gunner and a crew chief. And of course, the door gunners all carried M60 machine guns. And the gunships you had different configurations. Most of them had rocket pods on each side. Some had miniguns with rocket pods. Some had rocket pods with a 40 millimeter cannon on the front. So there was different configurations that you could use, and you had different warheads that you could use, and the rockets too. They were 2.75-inch folding fin aerial rockets, and they had 7-pound warheads on them, and you could put 15-pound warheads on them. But we generally used 7-pound warheads because they were a little bit more accurate. But you had your sights and your pippers when you go in for your gun runs. You put the pipper on the little spot, little light there. Called a pipper.
I don't know. I was on the ground. I was Air Force. I was on the flight line.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't get to go up.
But you fly low and slow, so it's easy to get shot at and hit too. And we lost quite a few people over there, but like I say, I was lucky.
Yeah, we have a guardian angel.
Yeah.
I had one too.
I lost some good buddies over there. I did. I'm sorry about that, but.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on. You know, I've been asking you for a long time.
Right.
You're a good friend, and I want to thank you for your service. Hey. Welcome home, brother.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being on the show.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't mess it up too much.
No, you did a great job, George. You did a great job. And so I'm going to have to say goodbye. So to all our veterans out there, our active military and their families, we salute you for all you do and keeping us safe. And until next time. We are now entering our third year salute here at Lakefront TV. We've had many great guests and veterans organizations share their stories with us. We'd like to hear from you too. If you're a veteran or a veterans organization, Lake Sumter counties, please give us a call. Lakefront TV can be seen all over Lake County and the villages and worldwide at lakefronttv.com.